Namaste. Today we'll talk about NUMMI plant. In 2010, United Motor Manufacturing Inc., that is General Motors, and Toyota Motor Corporation signed a joint agreement to be taken United Auto Works Union in confidence. The background was the GM plant. This GM plant was the worst in the GM plants. There were cases of drinking, workers urinating in the shop floor, and few murders. That was the state of the plant.
So General Motors spent a couple $100 million, at that time was a lot of money, to fix up this plant, automate it. And it didn't work. So they shut it down. Laid off, fired everyone. So then after the agreement was made with General Motors, the first thing Toyota found out was they were going to hire back the same workforce. That's kind of a shock. That was a series of discussions between Toyota and GM and the union there, the UAW. So we'll hire back the same workforce, the same troublemakers that did all the things they talked about. So if lean work begins with building in quality, again, the first principle of Toyota, 1902, Jidoka, it starts with building in quality. The workers in that plant not only would they not build in quality, they would intentionally sabotage quality, intentionally do things to harm the vehicle. They would take a Coca-Cola bottle, put inside the door panels, so when the vehicle left the factory, it would rattle. Intentionally. They would put sand in the gas tank. There was a famous story that's told in that radio show about a worker who intentionally loosened the bolts of the front suspension. So they found one in final inspection, and then they checked, and there were 200 of them. He had intentionally loosened those. They were going to fall off. Someone was going to die. They would shut down the line when they wanted to, not with a rope, but if they just wanted to, they would just all stop working. It was so bad. It was the worst workforce in General Motors' system. General Motors certified that. 2 certifying bodies said it was the worst factory in the world. One was General Motors. The other was the union. The global UAW said, this workforce is so bad, even we can't talk to these people. They're crazy. So in the factory, you could have, there were drugs, there was prostitution, there were fights on the line, there was gambling, there was a casino inside the factory that management was not allowed in. There was a lock on the door. Management could not go in. Can you imagine how bad this was? Now, we're going to build cars together with the same workforce. Now, Charles in the video said in 2 years, it became, one of the best.
With Toyota Motor Corporation and United Automotive Works Union built culture, respect to the workers, and everyone worked to take the same plant as the best plant of the GM. This happened in NUMMI. Learning was the objective from day one. The selection of the right operator at right position was discussed with UAW Union. Selection criteria and was implemented with confidence. Toyota production system approach was used to cultivate employees' involvement and support to the concept of teamwork. Employees need to feel secure in the relationship with the company. With these feelings, they were also free to support in Kaizen and continuous improvement. The militant workers were not a problem as sincere efforts by managements were put in addressing the shop floor problems. The union embraced the Toyota production system. The absenteeism rate dropped from 20% to 2%. Enables for cultural change. Shock J 2010, How to Change Culture Lessons from NUMMI by MIT Solon. A management review is a very fantastic article. The lessons learned are consistent with the organization development, leader, Edgar Schein model. Anyone wanting to change a culture needs to define the actions and behaviors they desire, then designing the work process that are necessary to reinforce these behaviors. A key Toyota principle is respect for people. The conviction of employees has the right to be successful every time they do the job. The thing that changed NUMMI was communicating clearly to employees what their job was and providing them trainings and tools to enable them to perform those jobs successfully. The ability to solve problems using problem-solving tools without finger pointing, easy to solve and easy to learn from mistakes was also key. The lessons learned are consistent with the organization development, leader, Edgar Schein model. Anyone wanting to change a culture needs to define the actions and behaviors they desire, then design the work process that are necessary to enforce these behaviors. During early April of 1985, Toyota started the production.
今月アメリカで1台の車が公開された。何の変哲もない小型車である。これはアメリカで初めて日米が共同で作った車である。製作したのは世界1位アメリカのゼネラルモーターズと世界2位日本のトヨタ自動車であった。
The key to NUMMI's success is that of management. Sacrifice some of its power, some of its traditional way of working. If managers and bring change by motivating workers to contribute and to learn, they have to give up some of the power. If management wants workers to trust them, we need to be 50-50 in making the decisions with them. The approach should be don't just make the decision and then ask, trust me, which is mentioned in Paul Adler 1992 article. We saw similar things happening like Volvo Udella plant. The NUMMI plant fate was sealed after a oil crisis followed by General Motors bankruptcy. Toyota found it to be the most expensive plant and decided to shut down.
Continued to thrive for 2 decades, and it was only in 2008 when General Motors had to file bankruptcy in the economic collapse that they pulled out of the joint venture. And then Toyota acknowledged that NUMMI was their most expensive plant in the United States. And so what they did was they decided they were going to have to shut that plant down, but instead of just shutting it down and laying all the people off, they spent millions of dollars on placement firms to make sure everybody who was working there had a job, and then they were constantly looking for someone to come into that plant and take it over and continue to work there and work with the workforce. And they found that somebody in Tesla. So Teslas were being built in
This is the plant. Once again, it started as Tesla. So this is NUMMI is also a case study and a history. Jai Hind.